Standing where Zeller's used to stand, we can look west to the first block north of King Street. George Barnes opened a book and office supply store on King Street East about 1845. As well as being the first bookstore opened in Hamilton, it was one of the earliest opened in Ontario. In 1868, Barnes moved to 17 James Street North, the very heart of Hamilton's commercial district at that time, and immediately across Market Square from Hamilton City Hall. In 1869, Robert Duncan and John C. Stewart acquired the company, which became known as Duncan Stewart and Company. In 1878, Duncan became the sole proprietor of what became known as Robert Duncan and Company. In 1883, Duncan added a printing firm to the rear of the store, which was known as Duncan Lithographing Company. As well as books, the store dealt in office and social stationery, magazines, wallpaper, and paint. In 1969, just over 100 years after its establishment on the site, Duncan's was forced to move to Park Street for the construction of Jackson Square. Just north of Duncan's, Hamilton City Hall was located on the same site for over 120 years. This building is the second town hall. The first was a combined town hall, police station, jail, and fire hall on King William Street that was opened in 1836. They moved to this site on James Street North in 1839. It was a combined market hall, also used as a theater, and town offices. In 1846, when Hamilton was incorporated as a city, was the first time it was called City Hall. In 1872, a new tower was added to the City Hall, some said to help the old building remain standing. It was soon obvious, however, that a new City Hall would have to be constructed. They tore down the old City Hall and began construction of the new City Hall on the same site in 1887. While the building was under construction, city staff moved their offices to what had been the old post office just north and east of the City Hall. The new City Hall opened in January of 1890, and the building served the city well until 1960, when the next City Hall on Main Street West was opened and the old site was sold.
Smoke-stained, rugged, steeped in history, this is the City Hall of Hamilton, Canada in late 1960, the doomed sentinel of municipal administration for 71 years. Progress has demanded a change, and the grand old lady of Market Square is committed to the wrecker's sledgehammer.
The Eaton's Company bought the site, and in 1961 demolished the old building for an extension of their store.
And while the words are inscribed to a new chapter in Hamilton history, the cornerstone of a nostalgic era disappears from the downtown scene. In photograph and memory alone shall the old City Hall be remembered. The price of progress is high and must be paid by all that man has made.
Directly across the street from City Hall was one of Hamilton's first retail centers. Joseph Lister Jr. opened a dry goods store on the northeast corner of James Street North and King William Street on land owned by his father. In 1852, he constructed this 4-story limestone building on the site. It was one of the most up-to-date structures in the city, as it had a separate heating plant, elevators, and an interior designed for commercial enterprises. With the opening of the Great Western Railway in 1854, the location of Lister's building made it an ideal location for many prime tenants. By late 1922, the Lister block had more than 150 tenants and a newly completed shopping arcade. There were 20 stores, more than 100 offices, and several private residential apartments. At 2:37 a.m. on February 23, 1923, fire was noticed in the building. It was so cold that the water froze as it was poured on the building. By dawn, all that was left was an ice-covered shell. Within a month, the ruins had been cleared and the construction of a new Lister building had begun. The new building was completed and opened before the end of the year. The new building had a terracotta lower facade, copper spandrels, and a unique L-shaped 2-story arcade. The building was designated in 1996 under the Ontario Heritage Act. Recent major renovations have restored the building to its former glory, and it currently houses some offices of the City of Hamilton. Looking across the street to the west is the block immediately north of City Hall. This block included the Mechanics Hall and the St. Nicholas Hotel, later the Hotel Cecil. Mechanics' Institutes began in England as a way to educate the working classes. The Hamilton and Gore Mechanics Institute was organized in 1839. It was incorporated in 1849 and opened this building in 1853 on James Street North. It had cost £4,000 and contained a hall large enough to hold 1,000 people. It was the main theater in Hamilton until the building of the Grand Opera House. They specialized in books on science and technology and were careful that the library would not degenerate into mere reading rooms for the reception of the sensational literature of the day. However, since that was what the public seemed to want, by 1881, 35% of their collection was fiction. The next year, when they could not raise the funds to operate, they closed. The next time a library was opened for the use of the public was when the Hamilton Public Library opened its first main library in 1890. The Alexandra Arcade was opened in the old Mechanics' Institute building. In 1911, the Alexandra Arcade was purchased with the intention of turning it into a department store. By 1915, they had expanded into the building to the north, which had been the Hotel Cecil and then the Griffin Theater. The arcade continued as one of Hamilton's preeminent department stores until it was bought out by the T. Eaton Company in 1927. In 1912, John Griffin announced he would be building a theater on the site of the Cecil Hotel building. The Griffin Theater opened in September of 1913 and had cost $125,000. It could hold 1,700 people. It was 66 feet wide and 140 feet deep and had a state-of-the-art movie projection and screen unique to Hamilton. It showed high-class movies as well as live performances and featured an amateur night. However, by June of 1915, the spectators reporting the theater was about to be taken over by other interests. The Alexandra Arcade took over the space. All of the buildings on this block are long gone, replaced first by Eaton's, then the Eaton Center. Moving to the east side of James Street between Rebecca and Wilson, this building began life as a three-story, three-bay stone post office that was constructed from 1856 to 1858. It is one of two pre-Confederation public buildings to survive in Hamilton. The other is the Custom House on Stewart Street. The first alteration, done by the post office, was the addition of two lateral one-story wings. They are no longer visible, but you can see them in old photographs. The post office moved out, and one of Hamilton's many insurance companies moved in. In 1898, the building was dramatically transformed into an entirely new office building. Now 5 bays wide, it was topped with elaborate side towers and an extravagant center cresting of the company's sun motif, as it was the headquarters of the Sun Life Assurance Company. It later became the site of the Park Business College. The last renovation added 2 stories of brick, so that the entire building is now a hodgepodge of styles. Plans for building Hamilton's first central Masonic temple were drawn up in 1870. The building, located on the southeast corner of James Street North and Gore Street, now Wilson, was quite ornate. It opened officially on July 1, 1873, with 600 lodge members dressed in full regalia marching through the downtown from the Mechanics Hall to the new hall, accompanied by the band of the 13th Battalion. In 1968, they were about to be expropriated by the city, as the location was to be demolished for the York Street Widening and Development Project. Before that could happen, however, on the evening of September 27, 1968, flames broke out in a janitor's closet and quickly spread to all floors. Because of the speed with which the fire spread, many historical artifacts and documents were lost to the 24 lodges who used the facility. As the fire went through the roof, the building collapsed and was completely destroyed. Across the street, on the west side of James, Eaton's took over the arcade building and moved their stock into it, opening for business on June 23, 1927. They had had a presence in Hamilton since 1915 with an order office, but this was a full-fledged department store. Even the widow of the founder, Mrs. Timothy Eaton, at 87 years of age, came to the opening. The store was an immediate success, and in 1928 made the first of its expansions. In 1950, it was announced that plans were in place to demolish the old arcade building and replace it with a more modern building. They began building a 6-story addition in 1957 that came to within 8 feet of City Hall. This opened in 1958 and was followed by the demolition of the original building, which was replaced with another 6-story addition. They bought the City Hall site when it was vacated and demolished the building, replacing it with a 2-story addition to connect their store to Jackson Square. They also constructed a parking garage just west of the building. This is the later Eaton store with the adjacent parking garage. The market was now located on the ground floor of the parking garage. The entire Eaton's complex was demolished in the late 1980s in order to build the new Eaton Center, which opened in October of 1990, closed in 1999, and was sold in 2000 to Furcan Developments of Toronto. The building is now the Hamilton City Centre.